Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys with Matt and Brian, the original will they won't they couple. I'm Matt.
I'm Brian, and I thought earlier today about making a dumb joke like that, but you beat me to it.
What? Dumb joke. I don't know what you're talking about, man. That's the smartest joke I've ever
So,
heard.
in that scenario, does that make like Angie the Roy who's in the way?
Why does she have to be Roy? Why can't she be Karen? Karen's cooler than Roy, alright?
I know, but Roy was around longer than Karen.
Listen, Karen did nothing wrong. She was just poor. She was written into a corner, and maybe she wasn't the perfect person, but who is? She's
She
fine.
she was. Should we just jump into Jim and Pam there off the bat, or
We can. I just want to. I want to
yeah,
give a full introduction though here
yeah,
because this is
we know what we're
February.
doing.
It's Love Month. We are talking about some great couples. And speaking of couples, if you're in the Rushford area and you're in a couple, or even if you're on your own, you can come to Wine and Dine, the second course. It is a murder mystery show that I have written and directed and that I am in, and as well as my oldest son, Elijah, who has been on this show and has confused us with the aggressive tone that he's brought to our episodes. But it's really funny. It's a lot of fun. There's a dinner for this Friday and Saturday option. And so make sure you're there for that Valentine's Day weekend. That's a shameless plug, but it is Valentine's Day month, Brian. And what's more Valentine's-y than couples and their love?
Some insert funny joke here.
You're really good at the improv. You're great at that. What's better than love? Punchline. Great job, Brian. And back to you.
Yep. So this episode was actually my idea because there's so many will they won't they's, and there's like three big tentpole ones that I think all the other ones fall into those categories, like underneath them, one for each decade. But it's just something that pops up. Like we're gonna miss some. We're gonna miss them because there are so many in like every show you watch.
And some of them, it's not so much even that we're going to miss them. It's more like we've got so much to talk about. And there's some I looked at, I'm like, yeah, we could talk about that. But every show does this. Every show has done that. Maybe not every show, but so many of them. It's just such an easy hook to give your characters. One that I'm not even going to take any time to talk about. Just get, like Angie and I, we watch High Potential. And that's a cool new show that's on. But because it's broadcast television and the main character is a female and then the main male lead works with her, there is a little bit of this will they, won't they with them, although they don't lean too much into it yet. But you just naturally assume there's a will they, won't they with them because that's just what you do with a opposite gender couple on or pairing on TV.
Exactly.
There's who is it? Oh, okay. I know you said let's go into Jim and Pam. I wrote
We'll get
on
to
this
them. Yeah.
point. I want to talk about for a second a couple that wasn't supposed to be a will they, won't they, but their chemistry was just so good, and that was Nick and Jess from New Girl.
Oh,
I
they
don't
were.
know how true that is of what I just had said. I had read that on the internet, and again, you can post anything you want on the internet. But if that's to be believed, it does make sense because they really kept them apart from the will they, won't they in early seasons. But they did have just fantastic chemistry together, and their personalities worked really well. And so we're talking about these will they, won't they's, and we're gonna say, hey, is this a good will they, won't they, or did they kind of drop the ball? So Brian, give your assessment on Nick and Jess.
I think Nick and Jess is a good one. So I'm trying to remember. So they got together. I think it was like what season 2 or 3, and then they broke up. They were together for about a season, and they spent most of the seasons apart. And didn't they get together at the very end? Is that about right?
They did, and they had a whole season together in the final season, or maybe the last. I can't remember, but there was like that 5 stars for Beezus episode. That was the season finale where they meet in the elevator, and then they're kissing, and it's great. And I thought they then did the time jump after that, right?
Could be. I think that wasn't the whole last season a time jump, or no?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I think they're a
I'm
good one. Yeah,
I'm a
but
little more on the fence with it, like just because there are some that do it really, really well, and this was one that did it fine, but it was manufactured tension, and that to me takes off points. Like that second season breakup or whatever, that was writers not knowing how to write well for them and to give them point and purpose. And so they broke up because Nick is a child. He's a child, but she's also a child, even though she cheats children. And a part of that was they both needed to grow up a little bit. I get that, but it's
they're
still
children in different ways.
Very much so. Yeah. But it did feel contrived and forced. And when you did that, I take points off. I can't call it bad because there are some very bads on here, but I think they could have done it better.
And another thing that we're going to talk about with these couples is most of them have like an interfering person, like are they going to be with this person kind of thing. So with the closest, there's different options, but I think the biggest one for them would have been Reagan, played by Megan Fox, who dated Nick for like almost a full season around there when Zooey Deschanel was having her baby and was off on maternity leave.
How dare she?
But even there, like I don't think you were ever really rooting for Reagan because she didn't really have much of a personality.
She was, she was hot girl personality. That's it.
Yeah.
But it was a very specific, like that was the most Jess stand-in, even though she wasn't like her personality at all. It was it was the most obvious because she has to leave for a couple episodes. We need someone to fill this gap. Let's put in this other person that's a love interest for Nick. And she just filled that role without having much of a personality to her, even though Reagan was an okay addition for what she was in.
Yeah, I think she should have been like a couple episodes, like a come in, make Jess jealous, but they tried to make her a full-blown like character, like a temporary member of the group, and it just never really worked for me. Yep. And that adds to the favor of Nick and Jess because you always were rooting for them to be together.
Yeah. Speaking of rooting for them to be together, we can go to Jim and Pam because that's when we talk about this, especially for our generation, that's got to be the couple that you talk about. That is their go-to. Yep. And I know you've got another go-to for an older generation than us that we'll talk about. The original Will They, Won't They, I want to say.
Yeah.
But Jim and Pam was ours. Even if you're like Ross and Rachel. No, Jim and Pam.
I mean, I have one for the 80s, one for the 90s, one for the 2000s. Jim and Pam are the 2000s, like the one.
They are.
And it's interesting is that one thing I learned listening to the Office Ladies podcast is that early on, Jenna Fisher was kind of like, what if she just does end up with Roy? What if like we make Roy better and we don't have her end up with Jim? And she was saying like she was pitching this to Greg Daniels, the creator of the show, and he's like, oh, that's interesting. But I think we're going to go with Jim.
You can't not pay that off, you know?
No, because in the beginning, you make, I mean, Roy's not awful. I mean, aside from a few moments, but they show him like they present him as the doofus boyfriend who like thinks he cares but doesn't really care. If Pam's not happy in the relationship, meanwhile we're watching the show through the lens of Jim looking at this unattainable girl and like their obvious chemistry.
Yeah. Roy is redeemable still, but he is not a good boyfriend in any regard. And they do drive that point home, you know, as early as the basketball episode when he's talking like, oh, I'm glad she's got someone that she can yap to at work. And, you know, he's like, yeah, I like talking to her too. And just the nice difference between how they view Pam. No, that wasn't basketball. That was the warehouse when the guys and girls, I believe. It's still.
I think it was basketball.
No, because they were competing. That was different. I think when they had their "Let's Talk" moment was because we just actually.
Oh yeah, that one.
I think it was I can't remember what the episode was called, but Jan comes in, does the woman empowerment in the conference room. So Michael goes down to the warehouse with all the guys.
And Madge is like, "Should I be here?"
I'm gonna go.
But then we mentioned Karen. I mean, and Karen is the most normal character on The Office. I think they always knew that she was going to be a temporary character, so she didn't really get like a quirk about her. Like even like Oscar is probably the closest thing out of the main group, but he at least has like the know-it-all and sometimes really annoyingly know-it-all.
Yeah.
Karen's just a normal, competent woman, and I like that season 4, she's like, yeah, I just had to get away from Michael and Jim, and then all of a sudden I can run a new branch and be my own boss.
Yeah, exactly. She's a very, I like competent is what was a good word to use for her, because she
Yeah,
seems like she's good at her job, and seems like she's good spirited enough to make it make sense why she'd be with Jim. And so she
yeah,
has that fun, quirky, goofy side where she enjoys comedy and she enjoys laughing, as most people do.
yeah.
But she also has her, like, I'm not taking this to an unhealthy level. I'm not crazy. I'm not absurd.
No.
So Jim and Pam, I do put as a good example of a will they, won't they. And I know there's complaints about later season them. And honestly, the complaints to me is more about the writers not knowing what to do with Pam once she drops
Yeah.
out of art school. It's less about the Jim Pam relationship and more about Pam, period.
I get that because I mean, later seasons once they're established and together, their story becomes less about them as a couple. They kind of become, as a unit, like a staple, common sense reacting to everybody else in the office.
Yeah. And that works. It's a good relationship.
Yeah.
And that's why people were like, admittedly upset with the final season in their relationship, because it's like, no, it's Jim and Pam, don't give them it was, again, it felt a little contrived, even if it was a, a fine writing idea to put this stress on them through trying to grow and be better people.
Yeah, I also heard that in the second to last season, remember Kathy, that the girl came in who tried to cheat with Jim.
Yep.
They were talking about actually having Jim cheat on Pam, and John Krasinski is like, "No, we're not going to do that," and like Jim wouldn't do that, and so he kind of like talked them out of that, which I'm so glad he did because that would have ruined that character for
100%.
everybody.
I mean, they ruined Andy in the final season, and so they're no strangers to just completely destroying characters.
And then also just a flyby, you could also you could also include Andy and Aaron and Dwight and Angela as like subversions of Will They Won't They as well.
Exactly. And really, like, we could fill a whole bucket with Mike Schur show characters, because Mike Schur loves the will they, won't they sort of characters.
Mm-hmm. I've got a few on my list.
So I know we talked about we have some biggies here. Since we're with Mike Schur, we can just jump to Leslie and Ben.
Yep, also on my list.
Because I think this was another good example. This was a better written. I hate to say it because I do love Jim and Pam. I think the Ben and Leslie relationship is better written, because once they brought them together, they kept them together and they found ways to give them conflict that wasn't forced and wasn't super dramatic. Sure, there's that initial, like, oh, we can't do this because, we're both government. There's a power dynamic, and there is a little bit of that early on, and that's completely fine. It never outstayed its welcome. It didn't go on too long, and when they finally were, yep, we're in it, we're together. They kept them together, and they enhanced both characters through the relationship.
Yeah, and we were never worried about them breaking up. They never got to that level.
Yeah.
And I love that in this. I mean, one of the funniest things is early on when they're not together yet, but we both the characters in the show and us, the audience, want them to get together. They're going on that road trip, and she's trying to get Anne to talk her out of flirting with Ben, and she's just like, no, you should flirt with him.
And Ben was I think part of it too is like Ben was such a better character than Mark was, and Mark was going to be the original will they, won't they with Leslie, he just was not. I've heard it said before that there's a scene towards the end of season 2 where there's Ron and Mark in like Ron's workshop or whatever, and Mark's like, there's a lot of problems in here, and that there's the safety concerns. And in writing that, I think the writers realized how similar Mark and Ron are in terms of their masculine personalities, that they're just there's a little bit of difference, but not too much. And so it became a redundant character, and like, we got to get Mark out. We got to have a different character that's a completely different style, but can still fill that role. And Ben was a great addition.
Oh, absolutely. And Mark, wouldn't have worked because the Mark was too close to like the DNA of going back to Jim Halpert. But like
Yeah.
Jim in the world of the Parks and Rec doesn't work because there's no Pam there. Leslie is not Pam.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. All right,
So-
go ahead. I'll let you direct us here. Where's the next couple we'll talk about?
If we're sticking with Mike Schur shows, a show we both love, we don't talk about as much, which is The Good Place with Eleanor and Chidi.
Oh, I thought you were going to go to a different one. I really thought you were going with a different one. I didn't include them on there, but I figured you probably would highlight them.
I think I know where you thought we were going. We can go to them next.
Okay.
Isn't this fun for the audience, not giving them what we're doing?
And I'm sure they know too,
Probably. I mean, Eleanor and Chidi, at first you're not really sure if they're actually going to be a couple. It could just be like platonic friends where he's just annoyed by her all the time. But I think it's, even within the first season, it becomes very clear that they start having strong feelings for each other. And I think it's because of those actors that really worked with them.
Yeah, they definitely have good charisma together. Both of them are really strong. This is Mike Schur's thing, though. Like, as we're pointing this out, we're seeing this, what he learned from The Office, he took, and he kind of had a couple different relationships that were all this way. There's an antagonism at first, like Ben and Leslie had. There's an early antagonism, but it's understandable. And Eleanor needed a lot of growth. She needed a lot of growth. And Chidi was a much nicer, better person, but there still was a lot of conflict between them at first, and a lot of like there's no way to make this work, but their differences attracted, and that these opposites attracted. And so that was a good will they, won't they? Like I said, Mike Schur does really good ones. And the other one that we're going to talk about is Brooklyn Nine-Nine with Jake and Amy. It is the exact same thing. They're antagonists a bit early on, but from that antagonism created mutual respect and appreciation as friends. And then with that friendship, you get to see them as romantic partners. And yet you still see that friendship all the way through. All of these characters, you see their friendship even more than you see their romantic feelings.
Oh, exactly. And Jake and Amy work really well because Jake is like a man. In some ways, he's got a little bit of the DNA of the Nick Miller man-child. I mean, as far as like his hygiene and finances and cultural, and so, but he's also good at his job, and that's what drives him. And that's where they're on equal footing. I think if he wasn't good at his job and they didn't have that same passion, they would not have worked.
He's such a subversion to that type of character, because he should be too cool for that department, so he looks down on people, but he doesn't. He supports Boyle. He goes with Boyle's ridiculous notions, even if he understands it's like that's a little too far. And he loves Amy and her weird OCD eccentricities that she has, and will like be on her side for things, even if you should be honestly like too cool for that or like better than that. But then you're right, he also has that childlikeness that should be immature, but yet he still backs it up with being really good at what he does. And so for all these different, he's like a mold that you filled with the wrong stuff for the character, and somehow it worked,
Exactly. When you can see it from his upbringing, like he has, like his mom was very flighty, and his dad was like an absent womanizer, and I think that lack of authority made him like both not mature personally, but also like strive for finding purpose elsewhere, which brought him to being a cop. And those are the qualities that Amy sees in him, and he sees in Amy like her, basically whatever, all the qualities he doesn't have, he sees in her.
Yeah, that type A personality, because that's the thing that he definitely is not. He's not the type A personality, even if he does see the details of cases and is good at recognizing details. He's good at what he does, but he needs structure and organization. And that's why both Amy and Holt are great for him. He can have a father figure who gives him structure, and a girlfriend, fiance, wife who will be structure in his emotional side too, in his relationships. And so really good characters to have. That was one thing I always was impressed about with Brooklyn Nine-Nine, because in the first season of so many comedies, you don't know your characters very well. But this
No.
show knew its characters really strongly, and really the only thing that they pivoted out of from the first season was the Rosa Charles relationship.
Yep, they got out of that quickly, and they just pretended it never existed.
Yeah, exactly.
And
It's
for
like,
the
no,
better.
that's too much of opposites attract. That's too far gone.
Should we go to the other Hispanic Amy, which would be Superstore Jonah and Amy?
Sure, and this is the first one on here that I'm going to say does not do it well, in my opinion.
Okay, how so? What do you say?
It goes back to manufactured conflict. I think taking a while. First of all, it does stink that, and there's so many of these shows where it's like the thing that's stopping them is they're already in a relationship. You know, as much as we don't want to admit it, we are influenced by TV. We're influenced by movies. We're influenced by the things we watched. And so you have so many things that are just like, hey, that person's out there for you. And it doesn't matter if they're with someone else. Your love story is possible. I just can never get behind that fully, even if I do say I love Jim and Pam.
And I get that. And the thing that doesn't really work for me with Jonah and Amy, looking back on it, is they're fine, but both of their stories are, like, their relationship is the least interesting part about them. Like with Jonah, I mean, it's great when he puts his foot in his mouth and Garrett's there just like egging him on, and he just like makes a fool of himself. That has nothing to do with Amy. And with Amy, I like Amy going around trying to fill all the holes and be the only competent person in the store full of weirdos. That has nothing to do with Jonah. They're both funny characters, but the fact that they're a couple is like incidental and like a bonus feature of their stories.
Yeah, I know that they did a breakup before they wrote Amy off the show, but they brought her back. I can't remember. Did they have them end up when they brought her back in the final episode or two?
Yeah, they ended up together. So I believe they broke up when she left, and then when she came back in the last couple episodes, they got back together. And then they did like a flash forward, and they have a kid together, and everyone's happy. Which, I mean, it was predictable. But
yeah, it just felt like this is what the writers are gonna do, and it's not quite true to their characters. You know, in those situations, like that sort of romance probably wouldn't have worked. You know, the way that they are, and the way that like she was with her previous husband, and then you know. Just like that sort of workplace romance, it doesn't have the legs that I feel like it would have in a TV show, you know, in real life.
Yeah, I like that show, but I just wasn't invested in that relationship, like you're saying.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna throw out something that you haven't seen real quick,
okay,
because I've got a couple on here that I know you haven't seen. I am currently rewatching through Once Upon a Time. And that is like fairy tales come from their fairy tale land and they come to the real world. This is a little cheating. It's not quite will they, won't they. It's more about like this couple, they're fighting for the will they. And there's all these plot circumstances. This is how you write some good characters, because their romance is very fairy tale. It's Snow White and Prince Charming, and they're very much the like, we'll always find each other. We'll always make our way back to each other. Nothing's gonna stop us. But so many things come against them that's the won't they attitude. It's not their hearts at all. It's not misunderstanding. It's not we're in a fight. It's like, I love you passionately and I will try and get to you, but this spell just separated us and we're in distant lands and we have no way to convert to go from this land to the other land. How do I get back to you for these 7 episodes? And you would think it would get tiring, but they didn't get tiring with their relationship, I felt like. And so I thought that their relationship was the strongest part of the show and was a really good emotional center.
So going off what you said, is that one you said that they both wanted to be together? It wasn't like I'm interested in you, but you're not interested in me, or vice versa?
Yeah, the first season, they didn't even know they were storybook characters, because the first thing for getting brought from the fairy tale world into the real world is their memories were wiped too. And so the whole first season is no one except for the evil witch who enacted the spell knew that they were fairy tale characters. So when he gets brought in, he's at first in a coma, and then doesn't know that he's supposed to be in a relationship with her, but there's
Okay.
still that attraction, and there's something about that person.
That makes more sense, because at the beginning you're saying, oh, they're both fighting for the will they. Well, the easier answer is, well, they just be together. You both want to be together. So if to pull that off, you have to have a strong, like, outside force that's keeping them apart, which seems like they pulled it off, which would be hard to do and make it believable.
Yeah, that's a show that its biggest crime was being a 24 show, 24 episode season every season, because it did get a little bit like, move the plot along, get to what you need to do.
I know, and then like they don't want to move the plot too far, because then they got nothing to do after that.
Exactly. That was that show's biggest problem, 100%.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Jim and Pam being the big 2000s. I think we have to go to the previous decade's big one, which is Ross and Rachel.
You got it.
And this is one that I think for the 90s and for many people defined the will they won't they. Because we establish in the pilot, it's Ross is into Rachel and he's too chicken to say, and Rachel is oblivious to the fact that Ross likes her, and so we have no idea what her feelings are at all.
Mm-hmm. This is the anti Amy and Jonah from what you were saying. This is one where these characters, the most interesting thing about them was the will they won't they relationship.
Yeah. But interesting thing though is that they allowed them to be together for like about a season and a half between seasons 2 and 3. Mm-hmm. And then they broke them up. And then they were together. They were apart for almost the entire rest of the series, and they both had plenty of relationships. You talk about like who are the blocking relationship people for them, and I think the closest thing would be like Julie in season 2, because that's when Rachel realized that Ross liked her, and he came back from China and was dating Julie.
Yeah.
Or Paulo in season 1 stopped Ross from admitting his feelings early. And
or Emily.
Oh yeah, and then Emily, who he was married to, and Rachel realized she had feelings, and he said Rachel at the wedding. But those are the main ones. I mean, they had a lot of other relationships, but neither one of them, none of the rest of them really were blocking the Ross and Rachel relationship, because that's when they were apart.
Yeah, and probably the biggest interferer wasn't even a relationship. It was or it would have been a relationship. Was the copy girl?
Copy girl
on a break.
Yeah, because if it weren't for Ross hooking up with her, they would have gotten back together like right away.
Exactly, 100%. And so this was one that you're absolutely right, where it's like, oh, you went for 6.5 seasons or almost 7 seasons with them apart, and you only flirted with the idea. Like, they flirted with it and they brought it back a couple different times. Like, oh wait, they hooked up again and she got pregnant. Oh wait, this happened, and like there was they're gonna get back together, and here's the 12 pages front and back, and that whole letter thing. And they toyed with you a little bit, but because they had so many other good things going on, that you didn't get strung along. It didn't feel as strung along as some other ones, and was able to keep apart so much.
They managed to pull off having them have a baby without getting back together. That's hard to do.
Yeah. And like flirt with the idea of getting back together, and it's like, oh, maybe this is what's best for the baby, and then, oh wait, no, that doesn't work. We didn't work, but we can still make this work as co-parents. All that.
Yeah, I love that scene with I guess Mona saying, "Oh yeah, I mean, I go away for the weekend and I come back and my boyfriend's living with his ex who he got pregnant." It's like she was the voice of reason at that point.
100%. Yeah,
because
that's unhealthy.
Yeah. Did you like that they got back together in the finale, or do you think that it would have been they had to? You think they had to?
They had to. I think the finale would not have been as appreciated if they didn't get together, because the whole, like, especially that voicemail, and he's like, "Wait, let her off the plane," and then it's like, did she get off, and then I got off the plane, and everyone just goes nuts. That's a really, really good TV moment.
That is. And I think the fact that at that point neither one of them had another relationship, like another, Ross could be happy with this lady, like, or Rachel with a guy, and at that point in the series they were both out of all of their other relationships.
Yeah. and so they did that well, and they showed you how to do it, and yet a show comes along and does the exact same thing, but they do it the exact opposite way and make it suck. And that's Ted and Robin from How I Met Your Mother. They
Yep.
also dated early on for like like probably less than a season,
Yeah.
and then they break them up, and then they have these flirtations as it goes along, and they don't get back together until the final one. They have a little bit of it, and
Yeah.
but it's really like it really is that will they won't they, but it's just done so poorly. And then they didn't stick the landing because this show was about How You Met the Mother, not hey kids, here's how I want to bang your Aunt Robin again, you know.
Exactly. I mean, you say like they flirted with her throughout the years, but correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a while since I've watched through the whole series. It's really more so Ted. Like once they break up, I think Robin is like out, but to every relationship, Ted's like, "Oh, but she's not Robin. I can't be with you." But Robin's not there saying, "I have feelings for Ted." It's just Ted like clinging on to an ex who's moved on.
Yeah, I thought that there was like some one night stands in there, or like sometimes where there was a little bit of Robin, like, ooh, do I believe that there was some of those moments.
Okay.
I'm a little hard pressed to remember exactly when and where they were.
Well,
But
and
you're
if
right,
there,
it is a lot
yeah,
more of Ted that it's still in his mind.
and if there are those moments, I mean, you and I both remember a lot about TV. They're not memorable enough for us to remember them.
Yeah.
And
Like I
I still
certainly
think
remember the whole Ted and Stella, and then Ted inviting Robin to the wedding and being okay with that. And even Robin's like, dude, this isn't okay. And causes Stella to run off and leave him at the altar.
exactly. I still would have liked to see Ted end up with Victoria. I think she was his best relationship.
That was a really good relationship. You're right. We didn't get to know the mom well enough.
No,
She was, and Christina Milioti, is that her name?
Milioti. I don't know
I
exactly.
can't remember. It's something like that. Some Italian name. She's
Yeah.
such a good actress, and even then, like we knew that she was something special. The casting department did great with her, and it's like,
Mhm.
man, you guys should have brought this woman in much earlier. Let us have some fun with it. I still think they probably could have done what they did in the finale and did the oh she died and we got back with Robin, and it would have had more weight because we had just met the mom. Let us meet her earlier and let us have fun with her
Yeah,
for 3 or 4 seasons, and then you can pull that back off. But they dangled it too much because they wrote themselves into a corner, and
they were holding on.
they didn't know where they're going to end. That was the other problem.
They were holding on to the mystery for too long. Like we didn't know her enough to really care about her as a character.
Exactly. And I'm sure the reason was like, well, the show is not how I met and then dated your mother. It's how I met your mother. Like, no, that's in hindsight. I think you guys would have changed it if you would have realized what you had.
Exactly. So Matt, this is the now we'll go back to the '80s. This is the big one that I'll probably have to tell you more about because I know you haven't seen much about it. But this is Sam and Diane and Cheers, and for
Perfect.
a lot of people, this was the big will they won't they. But this is one of the main ones where it ends with a won't they. They did not end up together. But it's also partially because Diane wasn't on the show for the last 6 seasons of the show.
Crazy.
Well, they brought her back for the finale. So here's the thing in a nutshell. So for the Cheers ran 11 seasons, and Shelley Long played Diane for the first 5 seasons. And there was a lot of well they won't they. They had the really crazy tension where on paper they are the worst couple. They get into so many fights, but they have that romantic tension. They can't deny that to the point where they bring in Frasier. It was the crazy thing about Frasier. He was brought in to be like the Roy of Cheers, and then he ends up staying in on the show even after she leaves the show. But Frasier and Diane are the ones that on paper match up perfectly. He's an intellectual like her. She even ends up dumping him to go back to Sam. Like they absolutely would have been together if she had stayed on the show. So then she leaves the show, and for the next 6 seasons, they don't really have a big relationship for Sam. They don't they bring in Kirstie Alley to play Rebecca, but they don't really do them as a couple. I think there's a couple flirtations, but Sam and Rebecca are not a couple. And so in the finale, there was a lot of debate about whether or not they should end up together. Diane ends up coming back into town, and they end up briefly getting back together. And they decide, like, we're going to run off together and be happy. And they leave the bar after making this big announcement to everybody. And then they're on a plane. The plane keeps getting delayed because of like electrical issues. And they both realize we're rushing into this. We are just wanting to be like to relive the glory days. This isn't right for us. And then Sam comes back to the bar and tells everybody, like, hey, like, we're not together. And then Norm, of all people, has this great line when he says, your love of your life doesn't have to be a person. And I always knew you'd come back to your real love. And he doesn't say it, but he means the bar is what Sam loved. So that's Sam and Diane in a nutshell. And I'm glad they didn't have them get back together, because it would have been really cheap having this woman who's been gone for 6 years come back in the final episode and be like, yay, we're back together. So they did that, but they didn't end up together is what they did.
That sounds smart, because sometimes for us in real life, the idea of a person can be more romantic than the person themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's Ted. That's his big flaw from How I Met Your Mother. And we see other characters who have that flaw too. But I do like that idea, that because the show is about the bar and the atmosphere it creates. And the title song, you want to go where everyone knows your name. And like, that's the family there. And so, yeah, to be able to be that place to create family, that makes sense. That's his love. That's his purpose.
Absolutely. And I think it might be one of the only ones on our list where it ends up as a won't they.
Well, on my list, a show that you haven't seen, but we've talked about plenty, we have a won't they, because Clark Kent has to end up with Lois Lane, and he can't end up with Lana Lang, who is the will they won't they for the first 5 to 6 or 7 seasons, because she finally leaves the show closer to the end run, like 6th or 7th season or something like that. But there's the will they won't they for a long time, and this is such a frustrating will they won't they, because like how with Snow White and Prince Charming, it's like, oh, plot demands it. There's also some very purposefully misunderstanding things. And so, Clark promised he was going to be here with them, and he can't be there. He got delayed because he was saving Smallville from this monster of the week, and she's left all alone. And then it's like, oh, well, he let me down, and he keeps letting me down. And then he gets to the point like, oh, we're finally together. We finally did get together. And it's like, oh, but there's secrets, and I can tell he's lying to me, and I can tell there's secrets. And he's like, I don't think I can trust her, and I don't know. And it's teen drama, and teen drama is so melodramatic, and you're just like, you guys are so stupid. And sure, it might be realistic, because all of us had teen drama when we were teens, and so those of us who dated when we were teens, that drama brought into our relationships, and we know how stupid that could have been. But they still did manage in the same show to have a good will they won't they with Lois, because that was that same Mike Schur thing where like they start off as antagonists. She pretty much bullies Clark for the first season or 2 that she's around, because she's just the go-getter, no nonsense, and like, I know best, but she's very endearing anyway. And so she's just a really well done character. And Erica Durance, who portrays her, just does a fantastic job with that. And so their will they won't they is actually really, really good compared to the teenage drama and the pettiness of the Clark and Lana. And this is from Smallville. I think I said that.
Well, you didn't say it, but I picked up on that.
There you go.
So do they do that, like with them together for 6 seasons, not knowing, or the whole time knowing that they were going to pivot away from her, or did they ever consider having him end up with her?
They knew that it had to be Clark and Lois. So they knew they couldn't get them too much into it. But Lana Lang is a comic character, and Clark does have a love interest in her in the early years when he's a teenager. And so they're pulling out of that. But, just they're setting up for heartbreak because everyone knows he doesn't end up with her. He ends up with Lois.
Interesting move going that long, because then you could be risking the network canceling you, and all of a sudden the show ends with him with the wrong person.
Yeah. Does Josh and Donna on West Wing, do they end up together? I know that they
don't.
They don't. Okay.
So
I know that
that's another one
thing towards the end, but
and that's with Josh and Donna. I almost missed it because that tension of theirs is very apparent, but it's not a focal point of the show.
exactly, because it's such an ensemble cast too.
Yeah.
And you know that they care about each other, and you know that caring goes deeper, but they didn't dangle the carrot of the will they won't they. They just let you watch these two characters who have a mutual respect for each other, who have a mutual caring for each other and are opposite genders, but don't really like dwell on that romantic interest side too much.
Oh, exactly. Because neither one of them were going to let a relationship come before their career.
Exactly. And being in the West Wing and being as part of the president's staff, your life revolves around POTUS. And like all of them knew this is the most important thing that we're doing in our life. And what's his name who died on the show in real life?
Oh,
Leo. Like first season, his wife leaves him because he's like, this is the most important thing. After this is done, I can come back to you. And she's like, no, I'm not going to wait that long. Sorry.
Yeah. No, exactly. And that they did a good job at showing us the stakes of like because they're not just, it's not just a job. Like they're putting their faith in Jed Bartlett to be putting policies for the betterment of everyone in the country. And they all felt that importance.
Yeah. And that's why that show is as good as it is, because it's the hope of what politics should be. You know,
exactly.
Anyone who's even a Republican, they can watch that and be like, hey, I don't agree with some of these policies he's doing, but I can appreciate the heart he has behind it. And our modern day politics, it's really hard to appreciate the heart that the opposite politician has behind whatever they're trying, whatever side of the aisle you're on. You can't give them the benefit of the doubt. You're like, no, they hate everything. They're trying to ruin all of this stuff. And you can't, it's so hard to have those party politics. But this show showed us that at its best, we could strive for that as a country.
Exactly. And then, can I pivot to a show that has nothing to do with politics?
Yes.
Another obvious one was Luke and Lorelai on Gilmore Girls.
And this is, to me, an example of it not done well. I did not like the Luke and Lorelai will they, won't they.
I liked it because at first, so like,
yeah,
it became very clear that they had feelings for each other for the first 5 seasons. Like every time that Lorelai had a relationship, Luke was like, you could see the sadness in his eyes, but he was like, oh yeah, I'm fine. You want your coffee? When they lost me on it, when they broke up because he didn't tell her for 6 months that he had a daughter. And it's like, understandably, she's upset about that. And yes, they ended up together, and they got their wedding in the revival, but at that point, it's like we had already gone through the whole everyone's other relationships. They finally got together. They didn't need to break them up to get them back together again. It was like if they had stopped at they got together in season 5, that would have been perfect, I think.
Yeah, both of these characters, they both, for different reasons, have their fists up, you know, and not just to each other, but to the world. And so Lorelai's ready at the drop of a hat to fight anyone who she feels like looks down on her and her life choices.
Yeah.
And Luke is ready to fight anyone on the drop of a hat just because he's Luke and he's a grouch. And so both of these characters who have one finger on the ejector seat, it's realistic that they wouldn't last and that they'd break up. But where it lost me, I agree that was frustrating with the whole breakup and that regard. It lost me in terms of, if you guys want to be together, what is stopping you? This was
Mhm.
a relationship where there really wasn't a good reason for them not to be together.
Yep. They're both emotionally stunted because they're acting like little teenagers. Like, do you like me? Do you like me? But
Yep.
you're both in your late 30s. Just do it or don't.
And sure, Christopher came into the picture a couple times, and right when
Yeah.
things were going to heat up, and oh nope, it's his fault. It's not his fault. You had all this time, but I do understand in this moment when you were finally ready, he was there. That's inopportune. I get that,
Mhm.
but you had a
Yeah.
lot of other times.
No, I think if Christopher was going to work with Lorelai, they would have been together before the show even started.
Here's the last one that we have both seen
Okay.
that they didn't end up together. And this is also another example of I don't think they did these well, is Jeff Winger and fill in the blank, Britta or Annie. Either one of those, there was a will they, won't they with anyone they tried to pair with Jeff. Like, Community is a hilarious show. They did not do romantic relationships well. You know what's the best romantic relationship that they did? Abed and Troy.
Brie Larson, right?
No, Troy and Abed.
Oh, Troy
And
and
I know
Abed.
that's not romantic. That's a bromance.
Yeah.
That was the best relationship on that show. They did
Yeah.
not know how to write romantic relationships for Community. They didn't.
If they didn't like tank Britta's character and make her the butt of the joke and make her dumber, then Jeff and Britta could have been a really good couple. Like season 1, Britta and Jeff could have ended up together.
Yeah.
But by the time you got to the end, it's like, no, you're just a shell of what you used to be.
Oh, Britta's in this?
Yeah, exactly. But Britta was smart in season 1.
All right, I've got 3 more on my list. One you've seen, 2 you haven't. How many more do you have to talk about?
I have 3, but some of them won't be super long. You've seen all of them.
Okay, go for it.
How about JD and Elliot on Scrubs? Another one I'm undecided as to whether how well it went.
I think it was good. I think that having them end up together, they're another like 2 emotionally stunted people, because again, Scrubs, as we've talked about, it's kind of like a stand-in. Even though they're in a hospital, it's a stand-in for like the high school cafeteria sort of demeanor. They're very childish, but it worked. Both of them grew up as the show went on, and there was plausible reasons that they would break up and not be together. And like just the whole thing with JD only wanting what he can't have. That is a very realistic thing, and that was not like stretching anything to create tension. And so it worked. It worked for him.
Yeah, we should also mention a lot of these shows also have a side stable relationship that is not a will they won't they. In contrast to that, like Turk and Carla, Suki and Jackson, Chandler and Monica, so many other options of like they get together early and they stay together while our main character is the will they won't they.
Yeah, even when Leslie and Ben were getting together, they had Andy and
April
get together. Yeah. And once they got together, they were good as gold.
And weirdly enough, that couple in a good place is Jason and Janet.
Weirdly enough, it is.
All right, what do you got, Matt?
Okay, so there's a TV show based on Marvel movies, but is connected to MCU called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Okay. And there is a couple in that the first season they start off, they're almost the same character. In fact, we call them Fitzsimmons. It's a guy named Fitz and a girl named Simmons. They're doctors or scientists at S.H.I.E.L.D. And they're both genius level, and so they're kind of like it's like the old guy Muppets. It's like they're the same personality, but it's just so that you have 2 people to talk back, like go back and forth with. Yeah. They started to give them more and more of their individual personality as the show went on, but because they're different, they're male and female, they also started to grow them as a relationship. We meet them when they've been together since like they're 12, and they've been best friends since they're like kids, because they were both geniuses that got into S.H.I.E.L.D. early on. And so they have such a great friendship, and you love them, and they're so cute, and they're fun, and then they start to realize, oh, there's more here, and then they fall in love. And then we have the Snow White and Prince Charming problem, where the world's blowing up every single season, and they keep getting split up, and they keep having to find their way back to each other. and it's just a really well written story. It's like, please let these guys be happy, for the love of God. They're great characters, they love each other, but one is in space and the other one is in 1943. Somehow put them back together. So
That sounds exhausting.
it is, but it Agents of Shield does this better than Once Upon a Time does, because there's been episodes where it's like, what they resolved in this one episode, they set up the episode before that, and they easily could have taken 8 episodes to do what they did, but they did it in one, and it moves at a fast pace, and it doesn't feel like it's too fast. Then the next episode has some brand new thing that could have filled and been stretched to take like 6 episodes, but it doesn't, and they're able to resolve it quickly. And so it moves really fast while still having an overall theme. So once that show hits like season 3, it's really in its stride and doing great.
Nice. So one I have that if you take off the 90s nostalgia glasses, you realize Corey and Topanga from Boy Meets World are not the best couple, but of course they end up, well, they did a couple back and forths early in the show, but they end up together for the last like 4 seasons.
Yeah. I thought about putting them on there. I didn't feel like it was enough of the won't they category. So that's just why I left it off. But
I'm just breezing past it.
Yeah.
And then I might sneak in my last one quick, and then you can finish yours off, which is Leonard and Penny on Big Bang Theory. Because for the first maybe third to half of the show, they are kind of back and forth, and they don't finally end up together till what, season 5 or 6?
Yep. But to me, that's another it's another bad version, because they leaned into the worst parts of their characters once they got together. And Penny was a great character before Leonard, and then she just became the alcoholic punchline.
Oh, absolutely. She's the straight man making fun of all the nerds.
And Howard started off as a terrible character, but he became a really good one once he dropped the whole pervert shtick when he was with Bernadette.
Exactly.
And their relationship was really good and interesting and a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Which, it was hard to separate the perv from Howard, because in the early seasons that was such a huge part of him.
Yes.
But you're right. He is so much more likable towards the end.
100%. Here's a show that we have both seen. Last one we've both seen is Chuck and Sarah from Chuck.
Yep.
I think they're a great will they won't they couple, and they're another one that once they got together, they got together well. The season 3 is when they got together, and the end of season 3 was just a really strong block of like 5 or 6 episodes. One of the better like 5 to 6 episode arcs that I've seen. I remember when season 3 got done, I was like, season 3 of Chuck might be the best season of television I've ever watched. It was really, really good. And then they stuck together and they did well for the most part. Then they had the whole amnesia storyline towards the end that I hated.
Yeah. I was trying to remember, because it's been a minute. So how did that end up again?
That ended where she technically did lose all of her memories, and we left with her not regaining those memories back, except for we saw a flash of, wait, maybe she might start remembering. So then it's like, leaves it up to you. And I'm like, no, I'm choosing. She's getting her memories back. That was, you set the seeds that it's going to be fine. So
Matt, you believe?
Shut up. And then final one from a show that you're very much not familiar with on Apple Plus called For All Mankind. It's a sci-fi retelling of the moon landing if the Soviets would have gotten to the moon first. And so it branches off into this alternate history, and each season is a decade. And so the first season is the 1960s and the reaction to Soviets on the moon. Next is 1970s and getting onto the moon and starting to colonize it. And so it becomes more and more science fiction because of how the world changed from the Soviets landing. There is the Cold War goes past the 80s, and so we get to see how does Russia treat America, or how does the Soviet Union treat America even in the 90s. And so there is the head of NASA at one point, her name's Margot, and one of the top Soviet he's not an astronaut, but he's part of the program, like their version of NASA. And they have to come together for something that they're working on. And so there's the Soviet and America relations, and these two are on the wrong side and opposites, but they kind of start to have a little bit of this Romeo and Juliet type thing. And it doesn't start off as romantic. It starts off as colleagues, and like the Soviets are like on this guy's Sergei's neck to be like, you cannot share anything. We're at war with them. We are going to put you in a gulag if you do the wrong thing, and that sort of thing. And she's like, if I give too much to the Soviets, I can be labeled a spy and a treasonous and all this sort of stuff. So there's some really good stuff that they have of that relationship, and that's all I'm going to say about it for now.
That's interesting. So when you mentioned like the warring factions and the Romeo and Juliet, because that's another one that's hard to do without the immediate Romeo and Juliet comparison.
Yeah. Yep. So, will they, won't they? Another show I've been watching a lot of is Lost. Is there a will they, won't they on Lost? Is that Jack and Kate?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of Jack and Kate or Kate and Sawyer. I mean, that would be. I stayed away from triangles like Jack, Kate, and Sawyer would be the one there. Maybe you throw Juliet in there or Anna Lucia in the early seasons, but nothing that
she wasn't around long enough to develop a will they, won't they?
No, they flirted with the idea early on, but they always knew that she wasn't going to last, so they didn't bother with it. Or kind of like I also didn't include the Steve, Nancy, Jonathan on Stranger Things either, because I'm not a huge fan of ongoing triangles.
Yeah, I'm a square guy. All right. Well, that's it for our will they, won't they. What is your favorite couple? Is there one? I know there's some that we missed, but is there one that you're like, it's a crime that you didn't even bring them up? Let us know and shoot that to us. We're on Twitter, or no, it's X now. I'm old. Brian, take it away.
Are we still on X?
We're not on. Don't message us on X because we have a profile. But do you check it? Because I don't check it. We're on Facebook. Hey, all you boomers out there who are still on Facebook, I know your kids have graduated and they've gone to TikTok. We're on Facebook. The TV guys, find us there.
We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube.
We're on YouTube. Yeah.
Yep. So.
All right. Well, let's go to trivia now. All right, last week we talked about The Bear, seasons 3 and 4, and one of the characters on The Bear is a character named The Computer, and so that is portrayed by Brian Koppelman, who it's one of his first big acting roles. He's actually been a writer for much longer than he's been an actor, and he wrote a movie that Rob Reiner's father was in. And so what movie did Brian Koppelman write that Carl Reiner was in? Well, that was Ocean's 13. Brian Koppelman was one of the writers for Ocean's 13, featuring Carl Reiner.
I'm a big fan of the Ocean's trilogy.
Me too. Even Ocean's 8, that wasn't quite as strong. And it's not because they were women. It's just the story wasn't quite as a hook. It didn't quite have the hook that 11, 13 did. It might be as good as 12. I didn't think 12 was all that fantastic either. But 11 and 13 is good.
Yeah, I've only seen the 8 once, so I don't remember. I like 12, but I do agree with you. I think 11 is my favorite, then 13, then 12.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
I think probably 8 is on par with 12 because 12 was a letdown. And 12 was actually a completely different script. And they're like, let's put the Ocean's characters in this and let's take that script and let's go with that.
I'm probably higher on 12 than you, but I still think it's the weakest of the 3.
Yes. Yep.
So for this week's trivia, one of our big main couples we talked about is Ross and Rachel. Ross and Rachel actually share a snack in the very first episode of Friends. So what is the snack they share in the pilot of Friends?
Motor oil.
You guessed it.
Yes. Hey, speaking of motor oil, I didn't even bring up Fry and Leela. That was a Futurama. But that's
what
okay.
What a segue.
What a segue. I don't know why, like, snack, and then I started thinking of Bender. And I'm like, yeah, what does Bender eat? Motor oil. Okay, that's... That's
So
where we're at.
next week, you're going to make me watch a new show I haven't seen before.
Yes, we're gonna watch an episode of Black Mirror, and we talked about Karen today, and so this is gonna have Rashida Jones in it as well as Chris O'Dowd. It is called it's Common People. It's the opener of season 7. And so that's a relationship, and we're going to talk about this beautiful relationship in the context of poor Black Mirror universe. And so, just a spoiler, there's going to be trouble along the way. So make sure you're here for that. We're going to dissect that, and it'll be Brian's first experience with a Black Mirror episode.
That will be, so you can find out how we like that next time.
And until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching. Mwah!